work. But when you start to point out their biases, or you start to point out things that they're doing to manipulate and profit off of the situation, then they get upset. So these things are still happening in real time right now, of individuals trying to take advantage of us. But it's our job to shed light in these dark areas and keep this at the forefront of the conversation, to say, look, we are helping to create this commercialization of, we're in a capitalist society, so everything's going to be commercialized. While we have commemorations and celebrations, there's great economic opportunity in this moment, but we have to be very vigilant about fighting to make sure we get a share of that economic opportunity. And it's not an easy job, because you have some individuals that will partner with the power and establishment from our community that are content sitting at the table of others and being kind of is token representation, when it's not really equality and equity in the work that we're doing, where we can benefit economically for our families and for ourselves.
Attorney Sam Collins, stay right there. Historian from Galveston, Texas. We're talking about Juneteenth, Carmelo Anthony, Cyrus Carmack Belton. There's so much that we've got to talk about today here on Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. Of course, the Keep Hope Alive Reflections podcast. You don't want to miss it. Back in just a minute.
Your opinion counts. 1-866-5.
All right, you want to say hi to CK, and Attorney Daryl Jones is also on.
Attorney Daryl Jones, how are you?
Hey, good morning, Cynthia.
Thank you, hon. Thank you so much for joining us.
Sure.
And thank you, Attorney C.K. Hoffler. If you need to get under the dryer, just send me that text.
Okay. Well, I was multitasking. I hope you couldn't hear it in the background, because I had these silent, those headphones that are supposed to cancel out all the noise.
No, girl. I get my hair done now, so I totally get it. That's why I said, just let me know, because sometimes when our hair gets dry, hello, they got to deal with our hair when it's wet.
Yep.
Don't crack on me, CK.
I'm not cracking.
I do my hair. My hair does best when it's wet. After that, I gotta wet it again. So don't play with me, girl. I got to wet this hair.
But it was so great to see you at the conference. And hi, Daryl, how are you?
Hey, CK, great. How are you doing?
Good.
And I missed Daryl. But you know what? I really want CK's the chair of our board, and Daryl is a very, very active and necessary member of the Rainbow. We need to get Mr. Collins up to Chicago so that we can broaden out this discussion about Juneteenth, right?
Yeah.
Because to talk about stolen wealth, to talk about, we talk about what happened to Black women in slavery. And of course, but Black men were raped too. And they were raped by the owners, and they were treated as sexual objects also. And they were raped in the middle of the quarters of the enslaved to diminish our men.
30 seconds.
So, it's just a whole lot of things. And this is not a slam on homosexuality. Homosexuality is a very real part of the human experience. We're talking about power here.
Yes.
And because rape is not about sex, it's about power. So hold on. Yes, that's what it is.
And Santita,
hold
what's
on.
happening to Black women today?
Come on,
So,
girl.
it's
Look.
a different type of rape.
Okay. Well, now jump through that phone, and I'm gonna give this to you right now. Hold on. The music is excellent.
So what?
The music is excellent. Oh, I love the music today here on Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. Thank you, Jeremy Geiger. You always bring it, but sometimes I have to watch you, Jeremy, because I don't know what you're going to do. But you always find something magnificent and wonderful that fits the moment. I wouldn't be able to do this show without Jeremy, and I just thank God for him. And we thank God for Ryan Lee, who's always able to step in for you. But Jeremy, let me thank you on behalf of me and Reverend for all that you have been doing for us. He used to sleep here at the studio Attorney Hoffler and Attorney Jones, Daryl and CK, and Sam Collins. He used to sleep at the studio so that he would not miss it because he works throughout the week, works on Saturday nights. But, we have to start the day pretty early here. And so, Jeremy, I love you and I thank you.
Love you too, Santita.
Thank you. Even though you didn't say it on the mic, it's all right. My dear. We've been talking about Juneteenth, and I know we've got the backdrop of the Carmelo Anthony case, his sentencing, Cyrus Carmack, just this 14-year-old child who was killed over a bottle of water that he did not steal, and shot in the back. Is black self-defense? Is that a crime? What is that? But it is happening. The frame this week really is Juneteenth. We've got the first African-American president who will have his Obama Presidential Center. That will be opened. And they were sensitive enough to do it on Juneteenth. And we appreciate that. That having been said, I think it's incumbent upon us to really peel back the layers. Sam Collins, historian from Galveston, Texas, really the birthplace of Juneteenth, to peel back the layers and talk about what Juneteenth is about. But because if you talk about what Juneteenth is about, you also have to talk about what happened during slavery. Of course, the sexual politics, which was power politics. You have to talk about the stolen wealth. It's the first time, really, Sam Collins, as we talked about Juneteenth down through the years, that it's one of the few times that I've heard people really just put the stolen wealth, the stolen intellectual properties. And that's part of the reason that it is so important to have Attorney C.K. Hoffler here, because she's in that intellectual property space. And ironically enough, Attorney Hoffler, black bodies. Talk to us about that.
Santita, when we talk about Juneteenth, we have to play it forward and be relevant, because our kids and our communities need to really understand, of course, what it's about, the reason why we have this celebration, why we celebrate this day. But it's not really a celebration, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
It's remembering the crimes, the difficult moments that our forefathers have suffered, whether it was at the hand of slavery, discrimination, and today. So when we talk about Black women being raped repeatedly during slavery and after slavery, today there's a different type of rape going on. If we look at the fate of Black women in the employment statistics, we know that we are the most impacted demographic today in terms of being laid off, in terms of being terminated, in terms of unemployment. And that is not to in any way diminish what is happening to Black men, because we stand together. What's happening to Black women is happening to Black men, is happening to our Black families. But if we just want to look at one demographic, the raping, and talk about the raping of Black women and all of the things that happened during slavery. And so when we look at Juneteenth, it's supposed to be a reflection on all that. We got to reflect on what's happening today. We have to reflect on teaching our kids in our community so that they understand, so we don't continue to make the same mistakes over and over and over and over again. So when we look at intellectual property, I look at NIL, the fact that athletes, high school athletes and college athletes are able to monetize their name, their image, their likeness, which we could not do during slavery. Heck, we couldn't do that until 2021, to be perfectly frank. Those athletes could not monetize their existence in college and high school until 2021, when the U.S. Supreme Court said they could. And so when we play it forward and look at all of the efforts congressionally to limit, and from the executive branch to limit the amount of money, to limit things that and the progress that's been made in NIL, I think there should be some restrictions for sure, but to limit the amount of money that they can make. Because by and large, the people who are making that money are African-American athletes. I think that is something we have to look at. We have to discuss. We have to, in my estimation, oppose those types of restrictions. There aren't restrictions on how much the coaches can make. There aren't restrictions how many times the coaches can transfer from school to school to school. And the coaches, yes, they're coaching, they're playing an important part, but they are not putting their bodies at risk on the field on the court. I mean, we have to really have this discussion, and that's what we need to discuss today when we're thinking about Juneteenth, when we're celebrating Juneteenth. And I agree with you. It is a wonderful thing to have the presence of mind to having the opening of the Obama Library on Juneteenth. That does mean something, but it can't be that we stop there. We have to continue these discussions daily and frame the issues in our community. Our faith leaders, our churches, our organizations like Rainbow Push, our conference this past few days was really designed to elevate the discussion and put together an action plan. When people left our conference, Santita, they had an action plan, what they need to do and what we need to focus on.
Well, you know, I mean,
I don't see it as what happened in the past, the awakening, what happened in Texas. It's just so ironic that, you know, Carmelo Anthony was found guilty of murder for stabbing that 17-year-old Austin Metcalf, and the jury completely rejected his claims of self-defense and just concluded point blank he was the aggressor in the altercation. It didn't matter what witnesses said; they just felt he was the aggressor. So the legal question, and I got my brother Daryl Jones on the line: can a black man, can a black woman use the defense of stand your ground? Everybody else does in all these jurisdictions that have stand your ground as a law, as a defense. But can a young black man, can a teenager use that as a defense? Can they use self-defense as a defense when the person that has died is white?
well, you know,
That is a question, an open question that I think legal scholars are wrapping their arms around. I think based on the Carmelo Anthony verdict that took the jurors less than 3 hours to reach, and he's being sentenced to 35 years, I think that begs a question, and I would say no.
well, CK, you know, and you framed the question, because really this cues this up. And Sam Collins, don't leave, because all of this is tied in together as we are celebrating Juneteenth. We are still dealing with these issues right now. But to undergird Attorney Hoffler's point, the Everytown for Gun Safety, which is a nonprofit that advocates against gun violence, they found that homicides are deemed justified more often in nearly every state when the shooter is white and the victim is black. A study from the Urban Institute found that homicides with a black shooter and a white victim were ruled justified in a little more than 1% of cases. For a white shooter and a black victim, the figure jumps to 11.4%. And the black jurors all were struck from the jury. And the jurors who got on, there was a list, Attorney Jones, and Attorney Jones is a former prosecutor, so you got to help us to understand what happened here. Because some of the jurors were not allowed to see the video. The jurors who were struck, some of them were allowed to see the video. There was grainy footage that was shown in the trial. There was high resolution footage that was shown to others who didn't even make the jury. This one gentleman, a black fellow who could not make the jury, who was struck from the jury, he said you could even see the raindrops on the video that I saw. And this black boy was sitting under the tent by himself, and he was approached aggressively by these four big white football players. And somebody else went to distract the coach. Help us to understand what happened with Carmelo Anthony.
Well, good morning, Santita and TK, and you're both right on point. One of the big things when you're dealing with the Carmelo Anthony case, from my estimation, is you've got to start with the premise. When we get to the part of striking jurors, right, we call them bats and challengers. When you strike all the black jurors in a case, the prosecutor has got to come up with, and it's challenged by defense as it should be, the prosecution has got to come up with a non-racial reason for the strikings. That is, they have to explain why they're striking all of these black jurors that is not based on race. The falsity of the Batson challenge is that the non-racial reason could be, they seem to have an appearance about them that would have been anti-prosecution, or it could have been I didn't like the way they answered one of the questions, that was asked. It could be any number of things that doesn't go specifically to race, to the okay challenge or strike of a Black juror. So, one of the things that's going to happen in the Anthony case is that we're going to see the appeal that's going to go up with regards to the Batson challenges, the striking of all the Black jurors, and the reasons that the prosecutor has given for striking all of these Black jurors. We're in an area where the trial is being occurred outside of Dallas and McKinney, which isn't a heavily Black area. And so you're not going to have a whole great deal of Black jurors that you're dealing with, which makes it even more important to try to preserve Black jurors that because you're supposed to have a jury of your peers, right? So for Carmelo Anthony to have a jury of his peers, you would think there should be some Black jurors that are on that jury. And what happened with the striking of these Black jurors really put it in a position where you didn't have a young Black guy that was going to have a jury of his peers. You then add to that the historical context from which this comes, and that is that ordinarily when I go into the courtroom, I already know that if I'm in a predominantly white area, there are prejudices in the minds of the white jurors that are going to come out at trial, whether it comes out directly or if it's just innate and just there. There's prejudices that are there. The nuances of being Black aren't understood. So for Carmelo Anthony's particular situation, it's raining, it's stormy outside. He's going into a tent for cover, right? Just to get out of the severe rain. And he goes into the tent of one of the arch rival schools. And then after he's in that tent, he's then approached by Austin Metcalf. He didn't go to Metcalf. Metcalf came to him. Carmelo Anthony is a small kid, right?
130 pounds, 5'7".
He's a smaller kid. Austin Metcalf is the larger white kid that comes to him, telling him to get out of the tent, and from different accounts, either puts hands on him or pushes him aggressively. And he realizes that he is in the enemy's tent with no backup, no protection, and more people gathering around him. Now, I'm not saying that what the decision that Carmelo Anthony makes in that moment to produce the knife to protect himself is the correct decision. But what I am saying is that when we're talking about stand our ground and you feel threatened, all of a sudden you should have that right to do and use that level of force necessary to protect yourself. And that's what Carmelo Anthony did, I think, in this situation. What makes matters even more interesting in the Carmelo Anthony case is that when it's time for trial, and I just don't know what the defense attorney was thinking, if there was something else that was out there. But Carmelo Anthony doesn't testify on his own behalf. His witness is his mother. And with all due respect, I love Black mothers, and I know they want to be protective and everything else. Carmelo Anthony's got to tell his story about why he felt intimidated, why he felt impacted by the situation, that he needed to produce something to protect himself. The jury didn't have the benefit of that. They didn't have the benefit of that testimony. So, I don't know if there's something else that was in the background. It doesn't sound like it was there because there's no criminal records, there's no indication of anything like that. I don't understand the strategy that the attorney had in going into that situation. That being said, it certainly sounds like and has the impact of saying that the stand our ground doesn't allow Black folks to stand your ground in a situation where you're being intimidated and surrounded around a whole bunch of people. That's problematic.
But what's ironic? Yes. No. I'm just pointing out the irony that enslaved people didn't have that space. Post-slavery, we didn't have that space. There's a book, At the Dark End of the Street, that describes how Black women had no agency. I mean, most people don't know that it was illegal to be a member of the NAACP when Rosa Parks was its state secretary. She became the state secretary because she was active, but she was also known across the state for pursuing the prosecutions of white men who were raping Black women, including authority figures in the community, police. That's what she was known for. And it seems like It's the same problem. It's just a different day, CK.
And Santana, I'm going to put this in a context, because a lot of people say, well, may not be able to relate, they believe, to the Carmelo Anthony issue. And this is why they need to relate to it. If you have sons who are big and someone attacks them and they defend themselves, they are going down because they're going to, just like this is a repackaged Trayvon Martin case. They're going to say, well, I was, oh my God, I feared my life. That is what's going to happen. This is why we need to pay close attention to this. And this is why we need to continue to educate and talk to our men and women. This could be boys and girls, but particularly our boys on this issue. But we got to talk to our girls on this issue as well. It's very important. I can relate to this so much. If you have kids that play sports, this is amongst sports people, track people, football players. This could happen anytime, anywhere, everywhere. This really could happen.
Sam Collins, what are your thoughts? Oh, I'm sorry, CK. I wasn't interrupting you. What were you saying? Sam Collins? Is Sam Collins still there?
Yes, I'm saying I thought you wanted her to complete.
Oh no, honey. And on this, on this show, we just jump in. They've been here a long time because we're just trying to have the conversation, and I want you to react to it. But you tell me you're a Texan, but you're also someone who's pushing Juneteenth, and you're pushing it, with a whole lot of information, a whole lot of education, a lot of social implications.
Yeah, in General Order Number 3, what I mentioned earlier in the second sentence, it said this involves an absolute equality of personal rights and property. So, this absolute equality into what they were saying about being able to defend yourself. We still don't have that right in the United States of America. When we talk about standing your ground, we don't have the right to stand our ground in a situation. We go into it thinking we have a legal right, but then we find out that the system turns against us if we're the person trying to use the defense that I feared for my life. And when you think about who has been most attacked on these shores, including the indigenous people and people in our community, we have a right to fear for our life based on the evidence of aggression toward us. There's been a great deal of aggression toward us while we've been on these shores and in this area. And, we're still fighting for that absolute equality to be able to defend ourselves and our families.
I want you all to hold on. I'm sorry. I want you all to hold on. I know Attorney Hoffler is at an appointment this morning, which she was kind enough to make the space for us. Attorney Darrell Jones on his way to church, but I want to give you all closing thoughts. Sam Collins, I want you to stay with us for a while. We've got Congressman Jonathan Jackson coming up, because at the same time, while we're looking at Juneteenth, while we're celebrating the opening of the Obama Center, there are 2 more voting rights cases. Darrell Jones, Congressman Jonathan Jackson was talking about that at the convention this week. This is the drumbeat you and Attorney Barbara Arnwine at the Transformative Justice Coalition have been beating for a long time. And to me, it's just, only God could pull all of these threads together. Nothing is separate, everybody. I hope that you'll check out this show on our new podcast, Keep Hope Alive Reflections, what you'll be hearing in upcoming weeks and months and years, hopefully. We will be reaching back so that you can hear Reverend Jackson's voice. A lot of things that he said, Jeremy, as you well know, he was a prophet, prophetic. He foresaw this moment. He did. And so we'll be bringing back a lot of these iconic interviews that Reverend Jackson conducted. But at the same time, we're going to marry that to these contemporary issues, which is this is right where he'd want us to be. I know if we were here today, he would want us to relate Juneteenth. He'd want you to know the real history of it. Sam Collins, Attorney Hoffler, and Attorney Jones know Reverend was a stickler for the facts. He wanted people to know that Mother's Day was actually Mother's Day for peace. He wanted people to know that African Americans started Memorial Day because white soldiers had been mistreated and had been dishonored by being put in a mass grave, and formerly enslaved African Americans dug them up and interred them properly and created Memorial Day. Black people did that. Black people did that. And too many of us do not know that. Everybody like and share this show. Like and share this show. And let me say hello to everybody today. Carol, Chapearl. So many of you are in here. And thank you. Go on to the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel so that you can see us live. Andre, sending you much love. Mr. Dunham, Shirley Carter, all of you at RJW949. Cynthia, how you doing, sweetie? Robert, Ugo Cheta, sending you love. Roderick, all of you. Bernadette, how you doing, sweetie? Christopher Hodges, hello, Christopher. Before getting in, before he goes to church, back with more of Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. Catch us on the iHeart app right here in just a few minutes.
Coming up, we'll have closing thoughts from Reverend Jesse Jackson right here on Keep Hope Alive.
Hey, everybody. And, I'm going to let you all hear
from
our wonderful guest. CK, I know, you can stay as long as you want, but I know that you got to run, girl, because you got to get this hair done. It's wet.
I do, but I'm headed to the hospital too.
Oh boy,
so,
how are things going this morning?
About the same.
Okay.
But I would say God is in the room at all times, and that's what's important.
Well,
and so
there's that.
But thank you for everything, your words of comfort, your text, everything. And so happy to be a part of this discussion, Santita. So I'm going to peel off, and I will give you a buzz later. Dale Jones, much love to you, and thank you for all you do. Professor Collins, I hope to see you and to collaborate with you on other matters. And I thank you for your analysis. So, Santita, love you, my dear, and thank you for everything.
Love you, sweetie, because I think that, not that he doesn't have access to great legal help, but I think that Sam Collins, it's always good to have some a great legal team so that you can press this issue, Sam Collins. And I'm going to connect you to Attorney Hoffler and Attorney Jones, because whatever we need to do, because CK, he's catching the devil trying to protect the intellectual narrative, the intellectual property, if you will, of Juneteenth. And so I think he needs counsel, advice, protection, and you all can help him to do that.
I agree. Yeah. I agree. Well, thank you for connecting us.
Of course.
Right,
I will do that by text.
Look forward to talking to you soon, CK.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I look forward to coming up at some point. My family, we're coming up the end of August in Chicago, August 30th. And, Galveston's most famous native son is buried in Chicago there. Jack Johnson, and he had legal problems in 1913 with the Mann Act. So it's more of the same with regards to fights in the court. I also have church in about 30 minutes. So I'm on the way. But thank you for the invitation, and again, look forward to working with you.
If you can stay right here for a hot second, because Congressman Jonathan Jackson will be on, and I'd love for you to give us like a Juneteenth in a nutshell, and of course with him, because my brother got he's always been business minded, but he has an MBA. He went to Kellogg here at Northwestern, and understanding the people do not emphasize, Daryl, enough the economic underpinnings of enslavement and all the work that enslaved persons were doing on those plantations. They were the inventors. That's why when we have Black History Month, we say, "Oh, did you know Black people invented this?" Thomas Edison needs to be horsewhipped. Yeah, I said it, because he didn't come up with his inventions by himself, with his discoveries by himself. He had a Black assistant, everybody. And these people do not collect people who are not smart. They get people who are smarter than they are, if you're smart.
Yeah, and the other thing that we often overlook is how individuals were leveraged through financial instruments. And say for example, the tax assessments of enslaved people, they were the most valuable property during enslavement.
No, we don't. Wait, Sam, we don't know that. So I'm going to bring up Congressman Jackson. I want you just to put that out there. I'm going to give my opening remarks to you. because
All right.
because I know he would do something with that in Congress, and you know that, Daryl. And that's important. And connecting this to our voting rights and representation, all of that's important. I just see so much, and this is such a blessing to talk to you today. Oh my gosh, all of you. I'm sorry I missed you, Daryl. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was really looking forward to seeing you soon too.
Well, I'm just getting over pneumonia, and so I was moving a lot more slowly this time than I have been. I didn't get there early. I kind of got there like 10, 11 o'clock, and I kind of getting up a little slower. Stay right, but look, I am back. Praise the Lord, and so I am. That's it, everybody. Boom. So let's try and get my brother on, and that's right. Lorraine's bring up Kyle Rittenhouse. Trayvon Martin.
Hi. If you record your name and reason for calling, I'll see if this person is available.
I mean, can we just
Keep up alive radio show.
please? And holes blown in his body. Are you serious?
Thanks. Please stay on the line.
The only reason we know about that case is because you and Barbara Arnwine stayed right down there on top of it. No one had heard about it. It would have remained buried if you and Barbara hadn't been in that little teeny weeny piece of Georgia. Oh gosh, this is too much. Is that Robert Patillo or Congressman?
Congressman.
Okay, we'll try him again.
I'm sorry, this person is not available.
Robert Patillo up.
If you would like to leave an additional message, please reply after the tone.
What kind of phone does my brother have now? What is that? Like all these noises. I'm gonna talk to him about that.
To speak with Reverend Jackson live, call toll free 1-866-594-HOPE. That's 1-866-594-4673. And now, the Reverend Jesse Jackson.
Good morning, hello.
Good morning, Attorney Patillo. This is Keep Up Alive. Let me lock you in with Santita. Hold on, please.
Hey, everybody. Keep Up Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson, the great Donny Hathaway, to be young, gifted, and black. Of course, thank you, Nina Simone. What a great, great, great song. And we're going to play that up for our Facebook, YouTube audience so that you can hear that song as we come up on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. We're talking about Juneteenth. There's so much that we're learning about it, so many pieces. Story of the enslaved that we don't think about, the economic implications, all of the things that African Americans invented during slavery, and those intellectual properties, those inventions were stolen, were owned by their so-called masters. Think about that. Think about that. You see these great men in history, but you don't see the enslaved people who did the work, who thought of they could invent because they were doing the work. They saw the need. A.G. Gaston, the great, great black businessman, said, in business, you first find the need and you fill it. That's what inventions are about. So think about that, everybody. Think about that here on Keep Up Alive. But all of this is happening as we're about to open the Obama Presidential Center. We're about to do that. And we're also looking at Carmelo Anthony's case and Cyrus Belton's case. A boy shot in the back by Rick Chow, and a young black boy who was frightened to death. I mean, we can talk about that. Of course, thou shalt not kill, but The Bible also warns us not to inspire the ire of people. You're not supposed to frighten people. You're not supposed to threaten them either. Don't do that. Things don't end well. This Carmelo Anthony was 5'7", 130 pounds. Austin Metcalf was 6'1", 213 pounds. And he came with his crew. Think about that. So we got a lot to talk about today. We're going to hear from Sam Collins. Sam Collins, Juneteenth, he is from Galveston, Texas. He's a noted historian. He's been bringing so much information to us about Juneteenth and what it really means. It's a celebration, but it's a commemoration. What is Juneteenth? What happened?
Again, Juneteenth commemorates when Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston and issued General Order Number 3. In the first sentence, it states all enslaved people or all slaves are free. Second sentence states that this involves an absolute equality. But also in General Order Number 3, it said the freedmen are advised to remain at their present homes and to work for wages, and that they would not be supported in idleness. So, this is also part of this conversation that they were free-ish and, being described as being supported in idleness. When have we ever really been idle? We've always had to work. We've always had to produce. We've always had to give our talents in this space. So, there's still a lot of conversation that we need to have.
Amen. And you talked about all of the inventions, the intellectual properties that were stolen from Black people during slavery.
Well, it's the talent and intellect, but also, I'm just going to give one example quickly. I looked at an 1855 tax assessment of an enslaver in the state of Texas, the largest enslaver, Robert Mills, and his brother David Mills. In 1855, they owned 268 people in Brazoria County that was valued at $108,000. They also owned 16,000 acres of land that was valued at $83,000. So the 16,000 acres of land was less valuable than the 268 people. And by having this financial asset, a paper asset, basically, because you had a deed and title to people just like you have property, they could leverage that property to buy and build more businesses and also to accumulate more property of more people. So oftentimes we forget that piece of the equation of enslavement as far as the economics. And as soon as slavery was over, the value of those people went to zero. But then all of a sudden you have tenant farming and sharecropping where they shifted the value into land and space. And then while they were paying the individuals to work on the property, they were charging them rent to stay on the property. So now all of a sudden they went from labor lords to landlords. And this is not a conversation that we have about how these financial instruments also created wealth in this capitalist system.
Wow. There's a lot to talk about, everybody, with Juneteenth. And everything is happening at this time. Think about that, Jeremy. Think about it. My wingman, Jeremy Geiger. I mean, who would think that during Juneteenth we'd be talking about Carmelo Anthony and Cyrus Belton and the Obama library? Well, not library, but excuse me, Presidential Center. And everyone, did you know that there was a cross burning? Sam Collins, Attorney Daryl Jones, in the middle of downtown in our great park. Did you know that?
No, I had not heard that.
Just happened. It just happened. So that's happening now. And this is a city where Dr. King said these were the meanest people he had ever seen in his life. It was so hostile. Dr. King was driven out of Chicago. He didn't bring Reverend to Chicago. Reverend Jackson was already in Chicago at the University of Chicago on a full Rockefeller Foundation grant. He was on scholarship there. But Reverend had experience in Chicago because he had relatives in Chicago. my Aunt Claire, my Aunt Addie, my great aunts came here to live, married to Pullman Porters and all of that. So he understood Chicago, he did, and he was a great organizer. Oh boy. Let's talk about this. And so much here. 866-594-HOPE, 866-594-4673. You can hear this show compressed. Jeremy is going to help us pull together this. He's going to do it, actually, the podcast for this show. Thank you, Michael Kindheart. Thank you, Hosea Belcher. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, my whole team, for getting this podcast out there. I want you to spread the word. Is it Apple, Spotify, iHeart, wherever you get your podcast? Go and get Keep Hope Alive Reflections, so that you can tell the real story of Juneteenth, and so that you can also talk about Carmelo Anthony and all of these issues that are hitting us at one time right here on Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. I'm Santita Jackson. Back in just a moment.
Your opinion counts. 1-866-594-HOPE.
Wow. Sam Collins, thank you so much.
You're so welcome, and you can look me up also under Professor Juneteenth. That's kind of a local name that I've kind of picked up.
No.
And,
that's who you are. How about that part?
Yeah.
Don't make apologies.
Yes, ma'am.
Take that.
That part. And also my website is truthstrong.org. So you could visit that.
Okay.
Yeah, Truthstrong, just one word together.org.
Oh, hold on one second. Were we able to reach Congressman Jackson?
Not yet.
Okay. Well, I really want you to meet my brother. He is a history buff, Congressman Jonathan Jackson. And
okay.
I'd love for you to talk with him. About.
Yeah, I know you're going to call me this afternoon after 2. So I want to make sure you got my number that they call me on.
Oh, no, don't say it right now. If I'm going to say
No, I'm not going to say it.
Okay.
But I just want to make sure you got it.
Yes, absolutely. That's what I'll call you on. Yep, because we're on Facebook, and I don't want you to give your number to everybody in the world. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sending you so much love, and have a great time at church.
We're gonna have a wonderful worship. And,
wait, hold on. Hold on. I got my brother, Congressman Jackson, here. I want you to meet him.
All right. Good morning.
Congressman Jackson, and I've got Attorney Darrell Jones here. I have got a young man who is going to be leaving us. He's Sam Collins out of Galveston, Texas. He is known as Professor Juneteenth. And he has been bringing up so much great information about Juneteenth, the intellectual property stolen from the enslaved. And he has had a fight to really keep the narrative straight. Congressman Jackson, Sam Collins.
Hello. Great meeting you, sir. Great meeting you over the radio. Learning from you.
Well, he's leaving now. I'm going to send you the...
Yeah, I'm on my way to church, but I want to tell you, you read about Juneteenth, you watch documentaries on Juneteenth. It's like reading about swimming or watching a film on swimming. At some point, you have to get in the water, and this is an open invitation for y'all to come down to Galveston, Texas, get into the Juneteenth water, and get immersed in the experience. And I'll give you a personal tour when you get here, because Galveston was the largest slave port in Texas and the largest slave port west of New Orleans during enslavement. So there's a lot of history here in the area, and I'd love opportunity to share that with y'all whenever you can make it down to Galveston. I look forward to it. Maybe we can go by Beaumont and get some boudin as well. So I look forward to seeing you down there. Absolutely. And I'm coming up to Chicago in August. So I'll see you here.
I can't wait.
We'll make it happen.
Absolutely. Looking forward to that. May God bless you.
Thank you for your time. All right, y'all have a blessed Sunday. You too. Y'all have a blessed Sunday. Bye-bye.
God bless you. Congressman, we have Attorney Darrell Jones. Who else do we have here?
This Attorney Darrell.
Okay, Attorney Darrell Jones.
How are you, sir?
Hey, Congressman, doing good. Down here in Louisiana with the New National Christian Leadership Movement, talking about Calais.
Oh, excellent.
But Congressman, you were talking about two other cases that you felt that we need to pay attention to.
Barbara and Trump versus Costner.
Well, I tell you what, we were looking at Juneteenth, but we were also looking at the Carmelo Anthony case. We were looking at Cyrus Carmack's case. We've been looking at we've been tying all of these pieces together, and of course, I didn't say this at the top. The cross burning here in Chicago. I think all of these things, all of these threads need to be pulled together, weaved together. But if you'd like, would you like to comment on Juneteenth before we go into these cases?
Oh, I mean, I think we have to.
Oh, hold on.
Juneteenth is huge.
I'm bringing you up. Hold on. Hey, everybody, keep your head to the sky. Oh, wow. Love you, Earth, Wind, and Fire, Chicago's own. I remember when Maurice White was part of Ramsey Lewis's band. Ramsey Lewis was our next door neighbor, Congressman Jonathan Jackson, when we were growing up. And don't you remember that? It was like, this is so exciting. Oh my gosh, this is just, and they just went on and just became one of the greatest bands in the history of modern recorded music. Thank God for Maurice White and Verdine White and the White family and Philip Bailey. And oh my goodness, just what a wonderful, wonderful group of musicians. Absolutely brilliant. So trained and so ready. We're talking about Juneteenth. We're talking about voting rights, our civil rights. We're looking at these cases where this 14-year-old child was shot in the back, falsely accused of stealing water. It's opened up a real schism in the Black Asian alliance, at least with some people. Other Asian Americans many have been speaking out, and they've been talking about the anti-Black racism and the white supremacy that drives the thinking of everybody here. But we send our love to the family of Cyrus Carmack Belton in a special way, because Mr. Chow was acquitted just a few days ago. Carmelo Anthony is looking at 35 years in prison. He would be eligible for parole. He's 19 now. He'd be nearly 40, 17 and a half years. And of course, Attorney Darrell Jones is a former prosecutor, chair of the Transformative Justice Coalition. He and Attorney Barbara Arnwine are among the leading advocates for our vote and Black representation in the United States today. We've got Illinois Congressman Jonathan Jackson with us. I want you to comment. I've given you this whole basket, but if we could just start with Juneteenth and its significance today. Is it a celebration, a commemoration, or both, in your estimation?
To me, it's really a commemoration, a time we set aside to be holy, to remember that the big picture for me on Juneteenth and is justice denied, that it goes to show you that we can get the 13th Amendment abolishing slavery, and within that same document have, unless duly acquitted, and start prison leasing and start the wholesale locking up of Black bodies. You get the 14th Amendment to say equal protection under the law, and then all the laws get written and enforced for corporations, declaring corporations persons, and they get more rights as citizens and more protection than African Americans. And there's a host of shareholder rules on what you have to do with secondary offerings and how do you protect the minority shareholders. The bodies of laws around corporations and their protection actually made the markets blossom on its protection, but it comes out of the spirit of the 14th Amendment, supposed to be for our bodies. And then the 15th Amendment, as soon as you get the right to vote, at the same time, you start the way to start gerrymandering and annexation and voter dilution and voter suppression and the Black codes. Well, Juneteenth, the government knew, and the conspiracy, the group of people, the owners that suppressed the news, the information from the media to the mailman to everyone not to deliver the news for 2.5 years. And we see that same pattern today. So we commemorate Juneteenth because it's a mirror to where we are today on information being denied and suppressed and justice not being delivered to those
that should have been set free 2.5 years earlier.
Is it ironic that we're looking at the Carmelo Anthony case um, and the Cyrus Carmack Belton case, this 14-year-old who was shot in the back, falsely accused of stealing water? Carmelo Anthony, all of the black jurors were struck from consideration. Some who were struck saw high definition footage. The jury, however, was shown grainy footage where they couldn't quite make anything out. We're looking at the repeal of our voting rights and black representation, black elected representation. Is it ironic to you that all of this is coming up at one time, or is America having an honest moment, Congressman?
History, people repeat history. I like that term a little better than history repeats itself. But people are repeating history. And you can see the clouds and the storm clouds beginning to gather over the society. You see the vigilantism of killing of these young black children. It starts there. You see the lack of justice. There might have been some legal nuances where someone tried to say that the person had some sort of right. No, you don't have a right to kill someone. So justice failed. The Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department come in. Those children had a right to be alive. When the jury fails, the Justice Department at the lower level is supposed to come in at the appellate level. And the government's supposed to file the appeal when people kill police officers on the Capitol grounds. And the federal government now has a Confederacy spirit that does not convict and prosecute those persons. They look to pay the perpetrators of violence. You are stoking and putting embers and logs on the flame of vigilantism to say that if you're killing in an administration's name, you will be protected. And you want to pay them and compensate them. Didn't that happen with the Civil War? That those that had been enslaved, that those enslavers got compensation and not the persons that had been the victims. So this is repeating. This is American history. This isn't Nazi Germany. No, this is very much American history. And so I don't even like the comparison with like Nazi Germany. I get it. But America has some very unique history. And this has happened before. And Santita, the part that's most disturbing to me now is when the justices denied, delayed, and all this is in 4K, 5K, is brought to you high def, onto your phone, onto your iPad, streamed, locked in your recording device on television, and you can easily pull it back up off of YouTube. It's in your face. And one of these instances, if history repeats itself again, shows that this is where this starts off racial violence and racial terror, and we need to get in front of this. We have to get justice.
Why did this resonate with you, Attorney Darrell Jones, with what the Congressman just said? Why did that resonate with you?
But Cynthia, as the Congressman was speaking and talking about getting in front of it, one of the things that we've got to remember is that we've seen this played out. They told us what they were going to do in Project 2025. They told us what they were going to do. And now they're in the throes of doing it. What we see happening, whether you're talking about the Shelby case and voting rights, and you're talking about getting rid of people or limiting people's voting rights and making it more difficult for people to access the vote. They're even having a conversation now with regards to only the head of household being a person to vote. That's part of that conversation that's going on. That goes along with the theory of getting rid of women's rights to vote. This is part of the conversation that's going on right now. When you start with that part of the conversation and then you branch out and you look at what is happening with Carmelo Anthony, and what you really see, from my estimation, is a devaluation of the African-American life. That's what you're seeing, is a devaluation of the African-American life. So part of what we need to do, in my estimation, my belief, is that we have got to stand up. There comes a point in time where you've got to really stand up and protect the rights the way our ancestors stand up and fought for those rights. That's why we're part of the Freedom Summer 2026, which is all these African-American and other friends of the African-American community groups that are going to be coming together. June 15th, there'll be a big a big activation and voter sign up and registration thing that happens in Harlem and New York City. There'll be one that's happening, I believe, in Houston. This has got to be the response. We have got to be the people to come and stand in the gap, stand in the moment, and be certain that these rights don't continue to be pushed back. That's the reason that we pushed, Santita, for the John Lewis weekend this weekend will be Good Trouble Lives On, right? A whole weekend of activity that we're already focused and planning. We're going to teach on that Friday about all the things that are happening. We're going to reach out and have activations. The activations aren't about bumblebees just getting excited and bothering you. The activations are hornets that are going to sting you. And they're going to sting you by going out to get people registered to vote, to remove people from office or vote in people in the office that are going to be supportive of our rights. And then that Sunday, we go to the preach portion of it, which is going to be the portion where we go into the churches. And we encourage the churches, the mosques, the synagogues, everyone, religious, non-religious, to register people in your circle, in your religious circle, in your faith circle, to get registered to vote and to check on your voting status. This has got to be the response to this moment. We're in a moment now, as the congressman has really clearly laid out, where you have actions, Santita, and we haven't even discussed this, in Ohio, where you have the FBI going after people that are legally registering people to vote. They're going through their offices, they're going through their homes, they're going through their friends to intimidate them, to stop them from registering Black people from voting. We've got to respond to all of this, and these are some of those steps, Santita, that we must be taking.
Congressman Jackson, given all that Attorney Jones just said, he said, Project 2025 telegraphed to us. It didn't telegraph, they wrote it down. I mean, with a man who has a PhD, focusing on African Americans, on what they're doing right now. We thought everything ended with the Calais case, Congressman, but you're saying no, this is not over. Congressman Jackson?
Yes, following what the play ban, and this is architecture. This isn't anecdotal. This isn't one-off. There's a plan, and it has a straight line. I want to thank Attorney Gerald Jones and you, Santita, for bringing this information up. And I think the big point we should let people know, this is one story. It's not multiple stories. It's one story. It's one complete narrative with multiple chapters in it. Next up on the line that's been going at full speed is the attack on women's rights. This starts showing itself in the SAVE Act, women having to re-register to vote if you are married. Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA have a philosophy that there should be one vote in the head of household. Just listen to what they say, and that all women don't need to have the right to vote. This goes on into birthright citizenship, questioning, this was the 14th Amendment, 1870, finally decided in 1878, and Wong Ark, Lee Wong in the Wong Ark case on a Chinese American was born, and the question that the Supreme Court had to decide, since he was born in the United States, he's not of Chinese origin, he's of Chinese ancestry, is he an American citizen or not? This would apply for all questions on immigration and people coming from around the world. And it was decided you would be born without a country, without a nation, without being a citizen anywhere. So in fact, you are a citizen of the United States. You're born here. You have citizenship. That was decided. That's on the ballot. And in the Barber case with Trump, started off an executive order. Now the Supreme Court is fast-tracked to bring that to the case. And the CASA case, although it may sound as it's simply going to be procedural, it certainly will not be. So these are cases that are before the Supreme Court now. The same thing that happened with Louisiana versus Calais. Congressman Phil Fields got in on January 3rd, sworn in. Trump was sworn in on January 20th, 2025. They picked up the Calais case on January 31st of 25. It was strategic. No sooner than he got in and had the right to vote. They heard the case March 24th. These are breakneck speeds on hearing Supreme Court cases. And then they didn't make a decision. Then they went on to October 15th of 2025. Second time in American history they heard two Supreme Court cases back to back. And then by April 26th 4th, April 29th of 2026, they issued their decision. Millions of people voted for this. Millions of people had already decided this case, and 5 Supreme Court justices are able to make this decision to overturn the will of millions of people. We've already seen the fracture in our voting rights. And Daryl Jones and Barbara Arnwine, I can't think of 2 people. There are many more. I don't know them all, but these 2, I can't think of people that do more for voting rights and voter education. And I'm going to be working so much more closely with them because the rollback on voting rights, the theft of the 2026 election has already begun. Votes were already cast in Louisiana and they've been invalidated. Votes are being cast in these states, but they've already done some of the rollbacks on the voting rights and cracking these districts. Votes have already been cast. That's unprecedented.
1 minute.
You know, it's theft by another name and it's slavery by another name, but the game is the same. We're talking on Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. I want you to check out the podcast, Keep Hope Alive Reflections. In coming weeks and months, you're going to hear more of Reverend Jackson's voice. We have about 20 years of him speaking and conducting interviews with Michael Jackson, with Barry Bonds, with so many people. You don't want to miss these, but we're going to marry them to current voices, to voices that are still with us. We're so excited about that. But if you want to hear this show as a podcast, check us out on Keep Hope Alive Reflections tomorrow morning. Thank you, Michael Kindhart and our team out in California. Back with more of Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. I'm streaming on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Hello, my morning stars. Back in just a minute.
Your opinion counts. 1-866-594-HOPE. That's 1-866-594-4673.
Congressman? Hey, you know what? I'm going to send you my opening remarks. It's according to a 2021 study from Everytown for Gun Safety, a nonprofit that advocates against gun violence. Homicides are deemed justified more often in nearly every state when the shooter is white and the victim is black. A study from the Urban Institute found that homicides with a black shooter and a white victim were ruled justified self-defense in a little more than 1% of cases. However, for a white shooter and a black victim, the figure jumps to 11.4%. It's just interesting to see these numbers. So I'm going to send that to you. Are you pulling up the church?
Yeah, hey, Conchita, I'm going to have to bounce out of here.
I love you, sweetie. No. I got you. You know, I was trying to get you.
Okay. Man. Yeah, but I thought the rest had started. My fault. Okay. I thought the rest had started in the past. That's supposed to start now, you know?
What?
Yeah, I made a mistake. Okay.
It's right here, right?
Oh, Robert.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. At the Hilton? Okay. At the Hilton? Okay.
Is the congressman gone?
Oh, I let him go.
Oh, okay. Okay. Daryl Jones? Is he still there?
He's still locked in.
Oh, okay. Attorney Jones? Can you talk about those other cases that just even in Ohio, what's happening? Because, you know, I think everyone should be happy about this moment, you know, with the opening of the Obama Presidential Center, even though, you know, in the neighborhood, we're losing a lot of black residents. You know, they're being priced out. Oh, boy. That having been said, it's going to be an exciting moment and people coming in from everywhere. But at the same time, we're being challenged, you know, on every side. And that's being missed, Gerald. Really. You know, that if you're trying to register people to vote, you're facing this kind of harassment and maybe prosecution. Hold on.
Hello, you've reached the office of Patillo for Georgia.
Try that other number. There are two numbers.
I don't have another number.
I thought there were two.
I never got your text message.
Oh, wow. Let me give it to you. Okay. Wow, that's crazy. see. This is to you here. It's the last one. Hey, everybody. Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. Thank you, Gary Hines and Sounds of Blackness and Nesby and all these wonderful people. So brilliant. Please check out the Keep Hope Alive podcast on Apple, on Spotify, on iHeart. Wherever you find your podcast, we are there. Do you want to know about the real story of Juneteenth? What the economic implications of slavery have been? We did not work for free. We were unpaid. The Stable Singers had a wonderful song, When Will We Be Paid, for the work we've done? I heard it for the first time in Ghana when I was 7 years old, Attorney Gerald Jones, at the Soul to Soul Festival, Soul to Soul Festival. They were celebrating Ghanaian independence. That actually became a movie because Ike and Tina Turner were there, Wilson Pickett, Les McCann, Roberta Flack, Eddie Harris, Carlos Santana, the Voices of East Harlem. I mean, it was just something incredible. Looking back, and we did go to the point of no return in Ghana. There are several points of no return throughout the continent, and what a moment it was. And they replayed a lot of that at Miss Flack's service, her homegoing service, where I did speak. So, you know, we were joined by Attorney Robert Patillo, but before we bring Attorney Robert Patillo in so he can help us to braid all of these pieces together, Attorney Darrell Jones, you and Congressman Jonathan Jackson have said that, wait a minute, the attack on voting rights and representation and our voice in elective office at the federal, state, county, local levels, in every area of American life, they're under assault, but there are other cases and there are other things that are happening. Can you share that with us?
Absolutely. You know, in addition to the voting rights being under attack, we have what's called the Barbara case that's out there also. And that's an attack that's going on birthright citizenship and trying to make a determination as to, you know, what is birthright citizenship, and will the Supreme Court say that simply being born in the United States is insufficient? So there's a whole challenge that's right there on the birthright citizenship phase that's out there. But one of the other things that's going on and people really need to be aware of is not in the courts, but is the weaponization of the Department of Justice involves the state of Ohio, where FBI agents have been searching offices from one of the organizations that's out there that does voter registration. It's the Ohio Organizing Collaborative. And they're a nonpartisan organization that goes out and they register folks to vote. They go to marginalized areas, voters that generally don't vote. They go after them to register them to get them prepared and ready for the election season. And Ohio, of course, is one of the swing states. Well, what the administration's Department of Justice has done is that they sent FBI agents out to the Ohio Collaborative office and started going through all of their stuff, trying to identify anything they could find that might potentially lead them to some type of fraud. And so they're seizing their computers, they're taking their phones, they're taking their records. They didn't stop there. They then went out into the community to try to find where they were living, where the people that worked at the Ohio Collaborative were living, to go to their homes and question them. They questioned their neighbors, they questioned their friends. Well, what this is, Santina, it's complete intimidation. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to create an environment where folks that register people to vote, that encourage people to vote, will be afraid to do that. And they know that if they can shrink the numbers of registered voters that participate in the system, it gives the administration and the authoritarian side of it the greater likelihood of victory, of holding on to power. This is clearly an intimidation tactic. It's not even clear if there's been any type of subpoena or warrant that's been generated by a judge for them to go in and do this. But what is clear is that the Justice Department is going into this place in Ohio. It's not going to be isolated to Ohio. Santina, Ohio is one of the places where they're starting. You're going to start seeing this, and I predict you're going to start seeing this in every place where there are contested, close elections and elections that are on the margins and could go either way. all of those places is where you're going to see these heavy-handed tactics occurring. It's a blueprint for what they're going to be doing coming up into November. This is just another sample of what's happening around the country dealing with voting rights on this particular issue, Santita.
We're joined by attorney Robert Patillo. He used to have the Rainbow Push office in Atlanta and really in the southeastern region of the United States. A brilliant commentator. You see him making commentary, political commentary all over the world. You can catch him on Roland Martin. Soon you'll be catching him on my show. I'm claiming that right now, attorney Robert Patillo, because I think it's important for us to get the truth out, to talk. Attorney Patillo, you just heard Attorney Darrell Jones, chair of the Transformative Justice Coalition, one of the nation's foremost advocates for the vote, who's a former prosecutor. We're looking at the attack on our voting rights, our civil rights, Black representation. And it will start with Black people and it's going to spread, everybody. That's what's going to happen. And it is happening with the SAFE Act. White women are going to get hit too. All women will. But we're looking at the Carmelo Anthony case. We're looking at the Cyrus Carmack Belton case. We're looking at the real moorings of Juneteenth and all of the stolen Black wealth, all of the inventions from enslaved Black persons who were working those plantations. The plantations were not just places where they lived. They were economic instruments. They were businesses. So it was a corporation that enslaved people, which we're kind of sort of trying to do now. Should we braid all of these things together or should we keep them disaggregated? Attorney Robert Patillo. Robert? Was he there? Okay. Well, we'll get him back. Well, let me ask you that, Attorney Darrell Jones. Oh, okay. I can hear you now. Yes. That's all right.
Correct. And the truth is, this is not just, we have to start seeing these things as all being connected, but all being planned as well. I'll take two disparate threads and show you how those two things are pulled together. If you look at the Carmelo Anthony case, you have to first put that into the context of President Trump's attacks on the Department of Justice, his attacks on the Civil Rights Division, his attacks on Black racial justice initiatives. He is sending a message and a signal to the entirety of the country that police brutality is back, that subjugation of African Americans is back. He was sending a very clear signal to the entirety of the nation that the quote-unquote woke agenda is now over for America. That included George Floyd, that included Trayvon Martin, that included every social justice movement that we saw percolating for the last decade. Indeed, Trump has announced the full-blown, as Barry Goldwater called it, white lash to the last decade and a half of social and political uprisings that we've seen in America that have really worked towards achieving the dream of a free and equal society. So those things go together directly, that you don't get that same verdict, I believe, in the year 2021 or 2022, when they knew that you had Christian Clark at the Department of Justice. We knew that there would be federal officials that as a backstop that will be able to file federal hate crime charges, or will be able to send in FBI or DOJ investigators to gain more information, work with state and local officials. Those things are all tied together. We're talking about how does Juneteenth work into this? Well, you're dealing with an administration that has done direct attacks on Black history. The reason they've done these attacks on Black history is because if you don't know the past, you can't influence the future. It's easy to convince people that you can get rid of birthright citizenship if they don't know anything about where the 14th Amendment came from. It's easy to tell people that we should have that we don't need to have any sorts of minority programs if you first rob them of the history so they don't know why those programs were invented in the first place. If you notice on the right, they've had 50 or 60 years to adapt to our tactics. So we're very much using many of the tactics from 50 or 60 years ago that need to be updated. But everything they talk about now is always about quote unquote meritocracy. Why should Black people get this advantage? We need to be making the argument to them of exactly why we need those programs. It's easy to say we can all be equal and merit-based if you start history as of last Wednesday, but if you go back to the full breadth of American history, you'll see that y'all had a 300 to 400 year head start and was simply trying to even that playing field. So you're dealing with an administration and really a movement where if you get past the bluster of Trump, because people keep saying we have to get rid of Trump. No, it's not about Trump. It's about the movement behind him. If you look at what they're talking about Western civilization. We are having political conversations. They're having demographic and math-based conversations. They understand they have to take away your right to vote in order to push forward an agenda that will continue removing resources from your people and your community and placing them with their people in their community. Your first day of political science class, they tell you politics answered the question of who gets what when, meaning that we're always going to be in competition for scarce resources. They've made the clear determination that those scarce resources need to be in their communities. And now that we understand what the terms and conditions are, now that we know what the shape of the battlefield is, we have to put our heads together and find out how exactly we respond. And the first way that we respond is by understanding all these things work together, go together, and have to be attacked together. This is why we call it systemic racism. Not that everybody within the system is racist, but that the system itself is broken and slanted against our communities.
Well, I mean, because you say that this is planned and this is, they say if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And those attorney, well, she is an attorney, said Hillary Clinton was at our Rainbow Push convention this year, and she said what we have to understand is that we're living through the counter revolution to all of the advances of the 50s and 60s, and all of the advances subsequent to that time. She said it's a counter revolution, and so we must counter the counter revolution. Where do you see Carmelo Anthony and the Rick Chow exoneration of the killing of Cyrus Carmack Belton and all of this? Or do you?
I think that it's a signal, which is that era of even racial recognition, before you even get to the point of justice, just a recognition of there being a problem. Because if you remember, the fight for generations was just say their name. After Sandra Massey was killed, or Breonna Taylor, it was to at least admit that these things are taking place. What we're seeing now is America simply saying that they're going to push this back up under the carpet. That the moment of racial reckoning for all intents and purposes is over. That we're going to go back to the status quo antebellum, because we realize that the system is so broken that correcting it will make even our most progressive and liberal friends uncomfortable in some situations. This is why we're seeing a white lash of this nature, where even folks who were previously, I know many people who voted for Obama in 2008 and 2012 who are hardcore MAGAs now, because once they saw what the true results of a free and equal society were, and that they would no longer would receive the preferences and the privileges that they had previously, well, all of a sudden you'll hear them, it'll get real timid at first, like, he's not wrong about everything. And I just really love Americans. We want to make sure that we have what we need going forward. And it's so important to me that this, for the future of Western civilization, that's when they get on that slippery slope. And what this movement is doing is giving them permission to say, well, it's not me. I'm not a bad person, but I'm just simply trying to uphold the system that exists, and that's the system that gives them privilege. So we need to adjust our strategies for the next several years. Let's stop pretending that we're fighting these battles in the Obama administration, or we're fighting these battles in the Biden administration, where we have a federal government and a judicial system and precedents that will guide the hands of justice. We're now in the wild, wild west, and we have to start playing by those rules.
When you say we're in the wild, wild west, what do you mean?
We no longer have we can't depend on precedents in the court system, for example. Previously, because of stare decisis, if a court made a decision, then we knew that would be what the rules are. Now it's very clear that whatever Donald Trump tells the Supreme Court, That is what the new rule is going to be. So we don't know until the rulings are sent down what exactly the laws are that we're playing by in America. If you look at the way the conservatives have worked on stacking the federal courts, not just during Trump, but for the last 20 plus years with the Heritage Foundation, you have far right-wing conservatives on every level of the federal judiciary. They start recruiting you in law school. I had friends who graduated from law school with me, went and worked at a large law firm for 4 or 5 years, and then got appointed to the federal bench because they were far right-wing conservatives, and they had, and now they have been on the bench for 15 or 20 years now, and they're able to make those rulings because they recruited them and indoctrinated them before they even were able to experience anything else in the legal field. Where we're talking about the Wild Wild West, when you're dealing with a FBI, which is and a DOJ, which are now announced they will no longer be investigating issues of racial discrimination against African Americans. They're going to be investigating reverse racism against people. We are no longer can depend on Eric Holder or Janet Reno even to defend our rights. We have to develop new strategies that are ready for the fight we're up against right now. I think many of us still think we're fighting, Bill O'Connor and LBJ. No, we're dealing with a very sophisticated, well-funded, well-operated machine. And I remind people celebrate Elon getting his $1 trillion. He is a far right-wing, racist extremist who now has more money than the GDP of all but 20 countries in the world. And those are the people who are running and financing the elections. The reason he gave Trump that $250 million was so he can get this $1 trillion that he has right now. And they have no interest in letting go of power. So we have to adapt to that.
Well, and it's important for us to understand, I've got about 3 more minutes before we go to break, that Elon Musk, who officially became a trillionaire this week, although to be fair, he is not the first trillionaire in the world. The real wealth of the wealthiest people on earth is hidden. He was selected to become the trillionaire, someone who was stateless, and so because he's gone from South Africa to Canada to here. He just goes around like Peter Thiel, Southern Africa to Canada to here, now to Argentina. It's a globalist philosophy. That's what they are. And he did this he's become a trillionaire on the government dime, on the government dole, Attorney Robert Patillo.
I want people to realize that Elon is nominally, as you said, the richest man in the world. Does he have more money than Putin? No. Does he have more money than the Saudi royal family? No. Does he have more money than many?
The royal family of England?
Essentially conquering and pillaging for the last millennia.
Yeah.
No. So it really depends on how the math is looked at. But in reality, when you're dealing with the Elon class, what they're pushing is this globalist eugenics. They're pushing the concept that Europe must remain pure, that the U.S. must remain pure, that we have to essentially strip mine the minority countries of the world in order to continue European hegemony. You're right. These are stateless individuals. These are economic mercurialists. These are people who do not see the rest of us as having an innate right to live. They believe the rich somehow are different from the rest of us. And that's the new ruling class of America, or as many people say, the Epstein class of America. And they have a different set of concerns, a different set of morals, a different set of values. And we, as the rest of us, need to determine whether or not we believe that our government should be handing the world's greatest welfare queen $3.2 billion to build the human landing system for the Artemis mission, and they haven't landed a single rocket yet. We need to determine whether or not our entire military should be dependent on Starlink for global communications, or should we should be integrating Grok, Elon's AI system, into our military to select targets, which resulted in a school for girls in Iran being struck, killing 160 people. We need to determine whether or not the Boring Company should be building underground military infrastructure through one of Elon's shell companies, or the military should be investing in Neuralink, another of Elon's companies, which has brain implants. They're supposed to control outside electronics. we need to determine whether or not Tesla should be building battery walls that are powering U.S. bases across the world. So when we talk about the money that Elon has, much of it is just our tax dollars redirected and put back in his pockets. So when he was spending that $250 million to get Trump elected, we have to realize he was investing that money. It was not through altruism. It was so he could get his trillion now.
Closing thoughts, everybody. You know what? Everybody, I want you to go to the Keep Hope Alive Reflections podcast. Where do we find it, Jeremy? We find it on Apple, on Spotify, on iHeart, wherever you get your podcasts.
Pandora.
Amazon. Thank you very much. Pandora, Amazon. That's right. I have to add those two. And this show will be a podcast tomorrow. So please check it out. And closing thoughts here on Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. I'm Santita Jackson. Check me out on the SantitaJacksonShow.com. SantitaJackson.com and the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Closing thoughts right here on Keep Hope Alive. I'm Santita Jackson.
Coming up, we'll have closing thoughts from Reverend Jesse Jackson right here on Keep Hope Alive.
You guys, this is a whole lot to try and disaggregate.
So I think the biggest issue often is that people didn't realize the way the Reverend did, 25 or 30 years ago, that these people were strategizing to essentially overturn the entirety of the civil rights movement. And now people are just opening their eyes. So these things aren't disparate. They aren't one-off. These are all part of a large, coordinated effort. And now to realize that now it's time to fight back.
Well, you see why he fought so hard.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And why he kept telling us, he told us this was coming.
Yep.
Daryl, Reverend told us this was coming.
Yeah.
Now, hold it. That's part of the reason that he pushed so hard. He said, remember he said slave masters never retire?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Or my favorite one, he was talking about why Noah became a drunk. He's been telling everybody for for like 40 years it's gonna rain.
Oh.
And after y'all all trying to get on the boat.
Oh, why Noah became a drunk. Thank you, Daddy. Lord Jesus. He would say things like that all the time. He thought that, wearing the cross was a little strange. He said, if Jesus were put in an electric chair, would you wear an electric chair around your neck? Really? He said, why are you elevating that? Hey, you know what? What people don't really know is just how sharp he was. Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah. Well, we were going down to Savannah. We were in the car with Cameron and had a long conversation about why that was the wrong cross. Even the people who wear the cross, because the Romans used the lower T cross for common criminals, or the upper T cross for common criminals, not the lower T cross that they use for nobility. So they would have crucified him on that particular cross. We got into a deep philosophical and historical debate about it. Basically, that iconography was invented during the medieval era. It has nothing to do with the actual biblical background or stories that it came from.
Well, I'm not going to say this here, not here right now, but just what we've done with Christianity is just shameful, I think. So, here we are. Just the whole history of it is just absolutely, it's shameful. And people are going to have to recover that. It's just like even understanding the different Bibles. We really need to understand that. And we're going to have to really explain all that happened during our enslavement, all of the stolen wealth. Oh my gosh. All of the stolen wealth.
But I was rereading Franz Fanon, maybe last weekend. And when you really think about it, the entire concept is and this goes back to the Elon conversation, they have to ensure that the colonized world never wakes up and realizes what the colonizers did and then decides all together to come get their stuff. Because if everybody decides to come get their stuff from Europe, that's why they're working so hard to ensure that we can never unify globally. You have to keep wars going all the time because as long as people are fighting each other, they're never going to come for you.
You ready?
I love it. Stand by. Can you all stay with me for about 5 minutes? And I just want to capture what you all have said very, very quickly. One moment. I'm closing out in 25 seconds.
4,
Jesse Jackson
3,
at Keep Hope Alive
2,
Radio.
1, live.
Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. Keep Hope Alive Reflections on Pandora, on Amazon, on Spotify, on Apple, on iHeartRadio app. Jeremy Geiger, love you. Thank you so much, my dear brother. Wouldn't be able to do this without you, and you won't have to. Everybody, check me out on santitajackson.com throughout the week, and remember to keep hope alive. Boom.
Reverend Jesse Jackson. For more information on upcoming shows and guests, please visit our website at www.keephopealiveradio.com.
Hey, everybody, I want you all to do me a favor, and if you could, Robert Patillo, Juneteenth, your take on it, if you would give that to me.
I think Juneteenth is the beginning of a conversation, not the end of it. Because many people consider getting Juneteenth as a holiday as being an achievement. I think the conversation around Juneteenth has to be, well, now that we're recognizing what happened, how do we move this towards actually finishing the job of reconciliation, reconstruction? It's something real to talk about. How will we structure reparation for our communities? Because, okay, we're recognizing, hey, look, slavery was a thing. We were freed eventually. But we need the conversation around Juneteenth then has to be a conversation about the failures of Reconstruction and the fact that it was cut off too soon and we were sold out to the Jim Crow South. And then that being the case, how exactly do we actually have the type of reparations needed to even the playing field and for America? Because if America doesn't pay a cost for the enslavement of African Americans, then who's to say in a century is not the enslavement of Croatians or the enslavement of Presbyterians? If America doesn't have to pay a cost for the sins it's committed, then it'll only repeat them.
So what about the stolen intellectual properties? And I'd like to pose that question to both you and to Attorney Daryl Jones. I mean, Black people were inventing everything in these plantations, which were, they weren't places to live. We romanticized it as we look at Gone with the Wind and places like that. These were corporations that made money for people, for families.
Oh, absolutely. It's a big part of that has to be this conversation about when you think about the agricultural techniques that were created. We talk about George Washington Carver. There was a George Washington Carver on every plantation in the South. When you talk about the music that was invented, that went on to create the blues and jazz and gospel, they all have the same roots on the American plantations in the South. When you talk about the culinary traditions, white chefs have become millionaire. Colonel Sanders were frying chicken in the South, were recipes that were clearly stolen from our workers, or the barbecue pitmasters that invented the science behind barbecuing, or even gumbo, which the African or native cuisine. So when you're talking about the amount that was stolen from us, the reason no one wants to have the conversation about reparations is that once you start having the conversation, they don't quite know where it will end, and so they just want to kill it in the crib before we can actually have an opportunity to really talk about what is owed.
Daryl Jones. I mean, so much has been stolen, and we don't have that conversation. It's just, and you see this historian, Professor Juneteenth, Sam Collins III, as he was saying at the top of the show, that he is fighting to hold on to the control of the narrative, because other people want to give another version of slavery, And we experienced it. We need to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Our ancestors did.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely, Cynthia. You're right on target with that, and that is part of the reason that one of the things that folks do, colonizers or conquerors or however you want to term them, do is that they want to cut you off from learning the history and the truth of what has happened, because if they can control your reality, they can force you to follow their reality that they want you to believe. And so, when it's Professor Juneteenth in Collins, and he's talking about the value and the importance of writing and controlling your own narrative. Nothing could be more important than doing that. And I tell you, as Robert Patillo was speaking, I was just having visions with regards to all the educational opportunities that were actually done through the hands of enslaved people, meaning those that were in the trades, those that were in the agriculture field, those that were in the math field, and astronomical, all of this stuff that really came from the hands of many enslaved people. One of the things when we're talking reparations, people have a tendency to think that when you talking reparations, you're only talking about giving cash or money to people that were formerly enslaved. There's many forms of reparations that people have got to appreciate, and one form of that reparation could be with regards to educational costs and institutions that are opening up no tuition for people that come from a lineage of enslaved people. And so there's so many ways of handling and working with the issue of reparations. I certainly would not want people to get stuck in the tunnel vision of believing that I'm going to get a check and that's going to be my reparations, because it's so much more than that. It's so much greater than that. That's truly a piece that I think needs to be focused on, Santita. And I would also add that to make the whole reparations piece a reality, it's going to take legislation to make that happen. And so that's where we come back to the importance of people voting and who you vote for and who you put in place in terms of making those decisions. One of the things that we're doing now is that we're encouraging every religious institution as part of its services to have a voter village.
Okay, welcome back.
A voter village.
And I'm so happy that I'm here with you guys today because I have something special that I want to share.
Have a congregants check on their voter registration status, encouraging poll workers to sign up, and getting new people registered to vote. This is going to be the way that you begin to deal with the issues of reparations and other issues that impact our community, and have representatives that are attuned to those issues. Thank you.
What do you think is going to happen with the SAVE Act? I mean, because I think that other people have to have a buy-in. It's just as we look at the movement to have our young Black athletes go away from these state schools, or go away from schools in these states that would deny them their voting rights. These are state schools, and the coaches of these income generating sports are the highest paid state officials. I mean, they're state employees. And some people are saying that you need to also look at young white athletes so that they can be in solidarity with their teammates. I would not argue with that at all. It seems to me that other people have to have buy-ins, right? There was something about Selma, that Bloody Sunday, that resonated with Viola Liuzzo and Reverend James Reeb. They saw themselves in it. I mean, that's what people have to do. What about the SAVE Act? Because the SAVE Act is going to hit all women. Daryl Jones, Robert Patillo, starting with you, Daryl. I mean, because my mother said, "Wait a minute, I'm 82. I have not been Jacqueline Brown in 64 years. What am I supposed to do?" I looked at my mother. I said, "Oh my goodness." You know, she spent 18 years, 18 years being Jacqueline Brown. She spent 64 years being Jacqueline Jackson. Period. What that this is going to hit everybody. I mean, my mother obviously is Black, but this is white women. This is everybody. I mean, what is the SAVE Act? I mean, and how are all of these? How will ultimately Americans be impacted by the diminishing of Black folks' access to the vote and representation?
And the SAVE Act, at its essence, would require every a voter to re-register in person. In person, you would have to re-register. You would need a passport or a copy, an original of your birth certificate. In order to register to vote, you'd have to prove your citizenship through those two documents to register and be able to vote. Your name would have to be the exact name match. So that's why they're saying your birth certificate. Because if you were born Jacqueline Brown, then you'd have to show that you're Jacqueline Brown in order to be able to register. So all of these pieces, what they're designed to do ultimately is to reduce the voter population. And it's really designed against women, right? Because, you know, when you talk about a lot of name changes, you're talking about women that are getting married and taking on their husband's last name. And so you have a reduction of eligible voters is what their goal is. And their belief is that if they can shrink the pool of eligible voters that tend to be on the progressive side of it, that then at that point, the conservative voters will be able to really have the day and push their way through and their issues through. Now, you're asking about the buy-in of it and why people should be concerned about what happens to African-American voters. I'm going to go straight to Black voters in particular, is because what happens to our country when we have more African-American elected officials, it tends to resonate on the issues of the much greater need of the population. So let me make it plain. If you're talking about education, it was the Black elected officials coming out of Reconstruction that made public education available in the South for everybody, because you had to be a landed white family, a wealthy white family, to have the education. Prior to that, it was the Black elected official that opened it up to everyone. If your issue is public housing, rent control, if your issue is the cost of housing, it is the African-American elected officials generally and the African-American voters that are working and pushing to make it so that everyone could have an affordable place to live. That's that push. It comes from that population. So when we're talking about why they should buy in, why they should be concerned, why they should be concerned that Native Americans as well as Latino Americans have ready access to the ballot, it's because those social issues and many of the business issues and access issues come to the forefront with those communities and through those communities and through those elected officials.
What's your take on this, Robert?
Well, on that point, it's very clear that they are fighting for survival. And that means that you have to view this as being an existential battle. This is a battle for existence when they're talking about Western civilization. I've gone down this rabbit hole of immersing myself in right-wing media just to really understand what the conversations are on that side. And it's not, we are having conversations about education, healthcare, energy, civil rights, voting rights, what we're going to do to have a more even economy that helps all of us. They're having conversations about white birth rates.
Yeah.
How exactly can we get white women having more children out of the workforce? They're talking about mass deportation now, ending all migration. They're having discussions about importing white South Africans, annexing Greenland to bring their white population into the United States of America, making Canada the 51st state to bring a higher white population into the U.S. In order to maintain or grow their political power demographically. So we're having moral discussions. They're having math discussions. And once you understand that that's the discussion they're having, it shapes policies that they put forth. Initially, many of their plans, many of their strategies don't make sense. But we put into the macro narrative of them trying to maintain and expand Western civilization. They fear not just that white people will become a minority in America, but also internationally. If you look at what's going on in the UK right now, and their fights against migrants, they're using many of the same tactics, many of the same words that we use in America against immigrants. They're using the same ones against immigrants. So when we're looking at what we're dealing with going forward, we have to put it into a broader, larger global context. One of the goals of America during the Civil Rights Movement was to specifically separate the American Civil Rights Movement from the global decolonization struggle. It was the same struggle. It was the same people fighting against the same institutions, both here and internationally, but they understood they had to keep us separate from what was going on in Angola, what was going on in Cuba, what was going on in Southeast Asia. They needed us to believe that we were on Team America, not Team South Vietnam, and not Team Revolution. And we're seeing that taking place today. And so as African Americans, we need to see the bigger picture at play, that each time they chip away at one right against us, they're chipping away at, against rights for the global community. And that has to inspire us to get up, struggle, fight. We have a leadership role, not just here, but globally, when it comes to downtrodden people fighting against oppression.
Where do you see the Carmelo Anthony case? I'm asking you, Robert, as an attorney. I'm asking you. I'll start with you, Daryl Jones, as a former prosecutor. I mean, did he have good representation as far as you can see?
And that's the part that's really troubling to me, Santita, because when we're talking about Carmelo Anthony and the representation, ordinarily as an attorney, as a criminal defense attorney, it's very rare that I would put my client on the stand to testify. It would have to be an overwhelming incident and situation that I'm placing my criminal defendant on the stand. With the Carmelo Anthony case, it's an exception, because in Carmelo Anthony, you're talking about a situation where it's self-defense. And it's difficult to generate a self-defense case without putting the defendant on the trial. In that situation with Carmelo Anthony, you have a young guy, a smaller guy, who I think should have taken the stand, knowing just the fact that I know now, should have taken the stand so that the jury could hear the fear that he faced, the concern that he faced when he went under that tent with those hostile people, and what he believed was going to happen to him if he did not strike. That's what I think the jury missed, and I think that's why the deliberation was so short and the verdict so bad. Thank you.
What happened? What did I miss? Because, some people different people saw different footage. I mean, same incident, right? But the juror saw grainy footage that was hard for them to make out, hard for them to discern what was happening. There's been a black juror, a man who was struck from the jury, who saw video. He said it was so clear I could see the raindrops because it was raining that day. And yet he didn't make the jury. How is it? I mean, is that why your vote is so important? Because we do, registered voters comprise juries, and prosecutors are elected by the people, right? Anyone take this. Because I
think this is in large part why we have these conversations so often about voting the entirety of the ballot, voting the entirety of the ticket, getting registered, and participating civically. Far too many people just get involved during presidential election years. When all the money is getting spent on ads and get out the vote, they'll get out and turn out for that. But on those smaller races, those off-year election races, those judicial races, judge who I've run for, prosecutor, attorney general, those sorts of things. And people who are setting these things, or even your state and local officials, who are going to be the people who are setting the tone for what is expected within your jurisdiction. Your mayor, your city council, your county commissioners, your aldermen, they're the ones who are going to give the marching orders to police and to police leadership on exactly what's going to be expected. So we have to do more to keep people more civically involved and civically engaged, so that when something like this happens, that it's not just when something gets national attention, such as this case, but there's a Carmelo Anthony case in every city around this country, probably on a monthly basis. And we have to be involved, not just when it's interesting, not just when it's popular, but on a continuous basis, because the way that they win is that they do these things in silence, and we don't find out about it until it's too late to actually make those changes. So this election year, I want people to vote up and down the ballot. I want people to vote for every single office. I want people to participate. I want people to run. I want people to join up, to phone bank, to find candidates. We have to stop being consumers in politics and start driving the ship.
Well, how do we find out who's running for prosecutor? I mean, do we invite them to churches? I mean, what kinds of, how do we meet them? How do we find them? Because, it's the mayoral candidates, the congressional candidates. Certain candidates get to church, but we don't see the people who populate the bench. Right.
Well, luckily, it is 2026. So type into the AI chatbot of your choice, who is running for judge or prosecutor in my particular area, and it will probably give you a list and their website. Go to their website and invite them to your church, invite them to your HOA meeting, and they will show up, especially in state and local races, particularly where they need every single vote. Some of these races are decided by 50 and 60 votes. They will show up and ask them questions, get commitments on the record, make sure that they have the same agenda as you, because otherwise, and I'll tell you this from experience, the people who call you are the law and order people, the folks who don't care about restorative justice, the people who are writing these campaigns don't have a heart for actually reforming these people. They have a heart for lock them up, throw away the key. The Fraternal Order of Police give a lot of money. A lot of conservative organizations give plenty of money, and therefore they get to make the decisions. We have to be active participants. Don't just be consumers when it comes to politics.
Attorney Jones, do we start inviting them to churches, to our club meetings? I mean, what do we do?
No, you absolutely invite them to your churches, invite them to your club meetings, invite them to your cookout. You need to find out who they are and hear who they are and see where they don't show up. It's not always where they do show up. Sometimes it's where they don't show up. Because if they may not be showing up because they know that they have positions that are adverse that you don't want to hear. So if they don't show up, you need to make note of that as well. The other thing that goes along with it, we talk about the judges and we talk about the prosecutors, but let's also talk about the heads of the municipal, the county, and the city governments, because they're the ones that are going to be appointing the police chiefs that are going to be telling folks what to investigate, determining the policy of how the police department is going to handle things, and generally the police department is the one that generates all the evidence that sends it to the prosecutor's office for prosecution. So we want to be certain that we include them within the sphere of influence that we're trying to do as well. And again, I just cannot express the importance enough for our houses of worship and everywhere else to have these voter information villages where you just take a couple of moments and tell people what's happening in your congregation. They should be pushing. We now have a new initiative where we're pushing for churches in particular to have 100% voter registration in their congregation, just within your congregation, 100%, in order to, and then getting them to the polls. But that's a large part of what we've got to do. We've got to have that information that's coming out initially, and we've got to be certain that we're educating people about the importance of being a registered voter and understanding the candidates for whom you're voting.
Where will the Carmelo Anthony case go now? Does he have the basis for an appeal? And if so, who is going to represent him? First, Daryl, you. I mean, you've already said that you have questions about how. Well, not questions. You're an experienced prosecutor. You're a brilliant lawyer. You defend people. So help me to understand what should his parents do now? Because most of us don't have a lawyer on speed dial. We don't have those kind of interactions.
Right. For Carmelo Anthony, they've already taken the appeal, which is the appropriate thing to do. And then what I suspect will happen is that either generally they don't continue with the same defense counsel. There's usually an appellate counsel that the family will be able to hire. If the family can't afford to hire an appellate counsel, there'll be a public defender, one of the public defenders that may be available to take the case up. Ordinarily, you don't want the same trial counsel on it because they're the ones who may have committed the error that has been the cause of the appeal. So you want a fresh pair of eyes to look at it and to try to overturn pieces of it. One of the big pieces on the Carmelo Anthony case is going to be the Batson challenge and the striking of those black jurors with and whether or not they were done correctly in compliance with the provisions of Batson challenges and the non-racial reason for striking them. That's going to be a big piece of that. After the appellate appeal, I would expect you're also going to see a collateral attack on the attorney with regards to any issues that came up in the trial that may show that he was insufficient or provide insufficient support and defense for Carmelo Anthony. But that's going to take a while. There's nothing that's instant.
But Robert, what do we tell our children now? I mean, because this can happen, a Carmelo Anthony can happen at any time, at any place. A Cyrus Carmack Belton can happen at any time, at any place.
Well, I think the crucial thing is one, to teach them that we have to be a part of the system. Now, I remember after Trayvon was killed, I went to a bunch of high schools and middle schools, and we did with Reverend. We did all these talks with the young boys about how to interact with police, how to look them in the eye, speak directly to them. Don't be all the things you're supposed to do. And the police shootings kept happening. And I realized that the question isn't how can we change black boys to make them more acceptable to them, and how do we change the society so that they can live their one genuine and true expression of themselves. You shouldn't have to essentially put on an act to be around white people or to be around law enforcement just to justify your existence and to not be killed essentially by either a vigilante or by law enforcement itself. So what we need to tell them is that we have to attack this system. We're no longer at a point where we need to be dealing with how to change ourselves. We need to be dealing with how to change the system from the ground up. And that's the only way to bring it into this permanently.
Well, how do we change it from the ground up? I mean, what do we do now?
The way we change it from the ground up is the same way they change it in this direction. That means we have to be 100%. I'm working now with high school principals to get 100% of high school seniors to be registered to vote. But not just registered, but registered and organized. Because it's easy to get some kids and have them sign up. Yeah, you're registered. But no, we need them organized. We need them educated, informed about not just why they need to be registered, but what they need to do with that registration, letting them know that that's both an offensive and a defensive weapon. Getting them organized to run for public office. We had a 21-year-old from Clark Atlanta University who nearly became the mayor of Marietta, Georgia. We had a 24-year-old kid out here who is on the city council out in Clarkston, Georgia. So, and more. So, when we're talking about changing system, it has to be by becoming that system and building out from there, and using those lessons that we've seen from the MAGA movement. I remind people that when Obama was elected, essentially Republicans had a full rebrand. The party of John McCain and Bob Dole went away, and we got the Tea Party revolution. The old guard hated the Tea Party. Then the Tea Party became MAGA, and now if you're not MAGA, you can't be in the Republican Party. And it happened in 10 years. So they can do that. We can do that on our side.
Attorney Daryl Jones, what do we do in this moment? I mean, there are still primary races that have not been run. We are in the throes of 2026. I mean, what's going to happen in Louisiana, for example? I mean, people already voted for Congress and they're throwing those votes out. How do you do that, Attorney Jones?
Thank you. I wish I had the answers to
I think it was a rhetorical question. You know, I'm like, that sounds so crazy to me. I'm like, these people want to vote and their votes are being thrown out. How does that happen?
They suspended the election. They've thrown it out. It's extremely rare that this has happened. I've never heard of it happening. So it's one of the first times that we've seen it happen. We've seen Alabama suspend the election so they can redraw the maps, the congressional maps, the way they want to do it. This is about as anti-American as it gets, about as anti-democratic as it gets. But the response has got to be with people, as Robert Patillo, my brother, was just saying, it's got to be for people who are still up in numbers and vote. What they're now experiencing, I'm in Louisiana, what they're now learning in Louisiana is they're trying to figure out what they should be doing with these maps, and Mississippi is trying to figure out what they should be doing with their maps, because they have such a high black population of folks that if they start redrawing lines, they start endangering some of their other people. So they may have indirect consequences to trying to redraw them.
Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, is supposed to be negatively impacted by this decision, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
How?
So it's a mess that they're dealing with, and he would be negatively impacted because you would have there would be more African Americans that end up in his district than they are now, so he'd be at least theoretically more progressive leaning and make it more difficult for him to be reelected. So it's a mess of a beehive that they're messing with right now. They should have left it alone. But and the other part that's kind of silence that's coming out with that is that, what's the old statement? Leave a sleeping bear alone. Well, what they're doing by poking this bear is that they really are waking up a large number of the African American voters throughout the South. And they're coming up and they're showing up and recognizing to register to vote. So, it's going to be an interesting thing to see what the outcome of this is going to be. But I suspect that it may not be what the legislature intended when they were trying to suppress all of these black voters and seize as much power politically as they possibly could.
But maybe that's what we need. Because a lot of people, Jonathan brings up the point, Congressman Jackson brings up the point that, Kamala Harris got little more than 77 million votes. President Trump got about 79 million votes, about 1.5 million votes actually separated them. But 90 million people did not vote. 90 million. And I think we have to be honest about the fact that people are turned off by the binary system, because it's really a unitary choice. Did you see what Chuck Schumer did by putting his thumb on the scales with the Maine senatorial election? He gave tribute to Susan Collins on the floor. And of course, it convened the whole Senate to congratulate her for not missing a vote. I mean, I saw you could see through that. I mean, they protect the institution, but not the people. Daryl, Robert, come on.
I think most people wouldn't quite understand what you mean by that uniparty system until working in D.C. for a little while.
Okay.
Where you see that the same folks who will be at each other's throat on camera or during the hearing, as soon as the camera's off, they're slapping backs and they're buddy. They're going to the same clubs. They're the same lobbyist that walks into the Democratic office, walks into the Republican office, and the final vote are often just a fait accompli. But the things that go into those are where the real work gets done. And this is why it's so crucial for us, because as Reverend Jackson would say, the people don't have a lobby, and so we're the people's lobby.
That's it.
It's important for us. It's important for us to get in there and say, okay, look, you want to split Memphis into 5 different districts. Fine. I want your white MAGA Republican to come out from 300 miles away to the north side of Memphis to explain to them why they don't need to have health care, or to explain to them why they don't need SNAP benefits. And so, as Daryl said, the way that we counteract all this gerrymandering is to organize and vote our way out of it. Because when you organize and vote your way out of it, then that means that some of these districts that they gerrymandered, they're going to be right back here in a couple of years saying, oh my God, what have we done if we organize correctly? Because you start incorporating all those people in. If you get them registered, if you get them motivated, the entire math that this redistricting effort was built off of collapses upon itself if we turn out. So that has to be the goal.
Well, that has to be the goal. And I'd like to know if there's anything you'd like to say before we go. Because, if you look at social media, if that's any indication, people are very, very, some people are alarmed by what happened to Carmelo Anthony. Some people are not. Some people feel that, hey, he murdered this defenseless teen, and he got what he deserved.
His father called him a watermelon.
What'd you say?
His father
called him a watermelon felon. Yeah. Did you hear about that? Austin Metcalf's father called this young man, called this boy, because he's a child, a watermelon felon. What? I mean, and there is a cheerleader allegedly who cheered for the Metcalf twins, who cheered for their team, and she had complained about their aggressive behavior. I mean, she had written a letter. I mean, and she said, you all need to address this because they are menacing. How, Daryl, Robert, you're the lawyers here. How does none of this come into play?
Well, I remind people that this is very much why we sued in Georgia to overturn the Stand Your Ground law over a decade ago, because the question of self-defense in this scenario is completely subjective. There is no objective standard, and that means it can lead to capricious results. There is no clear way of determining by the jury whether or not they believe that this person believes that they are in fear of their life. And so you can't get consistent results, and it's antithetical in large part to what we want to achieve in the criminal justice system. So the goal here, or the takeaway here, should be that we need to get into these state legislative offices the same way that Alex did a decade and a half ago, and start changing these laws. We tried suing, we tried introducing model legislation. What has to happen is we got to put the legislative footwork in so we can rewrite these laws the same way they did.
Well, you know what, Daryl, do you want to add anything to that?
I think that Robert is right on the point that, what we've got to do is that we've got to get folks registered, we've got to get people to the polls, and we've got to get elected people that stand for the issues and concerns of our community. That's where it comes about. So long as we do not get involved in the process is going to continue to do what it wants to do with the non-voting. Treat them however they want to be treated, because there is no power that's there. The only power that political people understand is the power of the ballot, and what happens when that power of the ballot turns against them. That's the reason why we push people to register and to get out and to vote, so that we can have elected officials that are on our side of the power of the ballot and representing those issues. Thank you.
And beginning to understand what democracy, number one, what a republic is. Can we get there? Because the woman in the crowd did not ask Benjamin Franklin, when she asked what kind of government you've given us, as she put it, he did not say a democracy. He said a republic, if you can keep it. We're a constitutional republic, as opposed to being a constitutional monarchy. That's a big deal. We've got democratic elements. These are people who were elite themselves and elitist. They did not trust the people. They felt that democracy was mob rule. I mean, how do we make this we're trying to move toward making this union more perfect. And and making a government that having a government that looks like the people, having people who we elect obey the dictates of the people, because that's not what's happening now. We're in a war that the overwhelming majority of Americans of every party, including the independents, do not want. We are here.
Well, the war, remember, that's because the most important American constituency does want this war, and that's Benjamin Netanyahu. So remember what's important in this country. There's the American people, and there's Benjamin Netanyahu. Then they know who's important.
Well, how did he get this? How did he get this much power? What happened here?
It was part of the agreement that America made after World War II to take over from the British and the hegemonic power to essentially control the global order, and part of that was to create a European colony within the Middle East to control trade, particularly in these oil-rich areas. And so you solved two problems at once, which is to get the Jewish communities out of Europe, which they did not want there. The Zionist movement had been working since the 1850s to create a homeland for their communities. First, they actually suggested Africa, South America, the United States, certain places. After World War II, the opportunity presented itself, and so it's part of America's agreement to get the atomic bomb from Great Britain to take over many of the British colonial possessions around the world, was to also be the defender and suzerain of Israel, and therefore we have to do it no matter what. If you notice, when Obama leaves office, he drops off $30 billion to Israel. When Trump gets into office, he drops off $30 billion to Israel. When Biden gets into office, he drops off $40 billion to Israel, because that's just the agreement that we have, and we will continue to do so. Even just this morning, we saw President Trump announcing he would have a ceasefire agreement in place signed today, and then Israel attacked Beirut this morning. So we are not running the show when it comes to this relationship.
What about the conflating of our militaries? The IDF.
Section 224 of the National Defense Authorization Act. Now, American and the Israeli military are already essentially one military. The F-35, for example, the most advanced joint strike fighter in the world, the stealth fighter that we've been seeing fly directly into Iran with impunity, has never been shot down. There are only 4 variants. There's the F-35A, which is the Air Force variant, the F-35B, which is the vertical takeoff and landing Marine variant, the F-35C, the C as in SEA, the naval variant with larger wings and a upgraded landing gear. But there's also the F-35I, which is the F-35 Israeli, and that is the only nation that has their own variant of the F-35. And it's also the only variant that the Americans can actually not control. We cannot, they've all gone and changed the entirety of the software system. They've changed much of the engineering. Their version is actually better than our version now, because they're the only country that's allowed to do so. Right now, the relationship that we have with them is that we will continue supporting them, and that we don't actually have the ability to control what they do when it comes to foreign policy. And that's across the board. Remember, Biden told Netanyahu point blank, do not launch a ground invasion into Rafah, and Netanyahu launched a ground invasion into Rafah. So I think the American people at some point are going to have to reevaluate exactly the nature of this relationship, because we have Congress people, administration people who will tell you privately that they hate all of this, but publicly they're not literally allowed to dissent from this kind of sheet of music they have to sing from. So it's a very important point that we really just do not talk enough about in America.
Well, Attorney Darrell Jones, if you want to weigh in on this or anything else before we go. Well,
no, he's gone.
Okay. Well, Attorney Petillo, it's always so refreshing to speak with you, because that is an issue that has, corporate media won't touch that particular issue. They won't touch it. And has that law passed? I mean, it's something that people are talking about in social media, but everybody's not on TikTok. Everybody's not on Instagram.
Yeah, and that's part of the problem that the NDAA is still being debated, so it has not passed yet. But it's important for the public to have this information about not just the Israeli part, but the fact that we are raising the defense budget to $1.5 trillion. We talk about Elon's $1 trillion.
Mm-hmm.
The defense budget alone, they're trying to raise by 50% from last year. What we're talking about during the Biden administration, the defense budget was about $700 billion, which is still already the largest in the world. We essentially are going to double our defense budget in less than 4 years. So the real discussion has to be, when we're talking about cutting waste, fraud, and abuse, getting people off of the government till Elon's billions of dollars, those things, that's all connected to the amount that we are spending on our military and the reason we can't fund other issues. And I think every Democrat needs to vote against this NDAA, but they won't because they have military bases in their communities and they know that they'll get those re-election ads saying, you did not support our troops, you voted against veteran housing and this, that, and the other. When the bill is truthfully just a $1.5 trillion giveaway to all the Donald Trump's friends and family members. His kids are making money off of this because they're invested in drone companies and AI companies. You know, Bezos is making money. Zuckerberg is making money. This is just a giant boondoggle giveaway to the richest people in the world and to foreign interests. But we will never see a debate around it.
But is this not just an honest moment? I mean, because we can take Trump's name out and insert here different names, right? He's doing it on a scale that, at least on top of the table that we have not seen. But I mean, congresspersons are the members of Congress in both houses are allowed to do insider trading, and then pass the legislation to protect it, to make it happen, and to protect the companies that they profit from. I mean, Robert.
And this is why nothing will get done, because you're asking the same people who benefit from the system to regulate the system that they benefit from. It doesn't make sense, because even if you are a congressperson who wants to do the right thing, how long of just voting by yourself until you say, well, I might as well cash out like everybody else does? It's human nature. And at the end of the day, how exactly do you convince people to vote outside their invited self-interest? And unless the American people stand up and force it to happen, it's not going to take place.
Honey, I'm going to have to run, and I'm going to call you right now. But in the meantime, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I love you, love you, love you. Go to SantitaJackson.com and continue to stay tuned in. I'm going to be coming to you throughout the week. And I'm going to establish a new show on the Rejoice Network. I'm very excited about that. And that will be once a week. I've got a lot of things that I'm doing, but we're developing this podcast. Say hello, Jeremy. He and I are doing this, and we're very excited because we're having to go through, Jerry's about 1,000 shows, because we have Reverend's Voice for about 19 and a half, 20 years. And really marry those. And then there's some other interviews I'm going to do again, because you know what? We never know. I just lost one of my oldest and dearest friends, a young man who, when my father passed, my mother said, I have no experience. Obviously, she was devastated. She said, I have no experience in this. And the A.R. Leak's family, we used to live with Reverend Leak and his wife. And Spencer Leak, Uncle Spencer, now his son, Spencer Jr. Spencer and his mother came over to sit with us, stand with us before my father had to be taken away. And my mother looked at Spencer and said, you know how to do this. I'm giving it all to you. And when I tell you, and Jeremy, you saw it, he put our father away beautifully. He chose the flowers. He did everything. Just everything. Drove him to South Carolina. We stopped in Nashville. He contacted the Leafy family in South Carolina. He did everything. And just so much maturity. And he absolutely ushered that funeral home, that beautiful, beautiful funeral home, into the 21st century. And he died 2 weeks ago, 56 years of age. And it's just been devastating. You know, my father, we didn't want him to go, but we knew he had a terminal illness because that's what PSP is. Spencer, this hit everybody out of the blue. And they had to call the sheriffs and the Chicago police because thousands of people came by to view him. Such was his reputation in the community. And Reverend Meeks, who's one of the officiants, along with Reverend Charles Jenkins, said, look, I didn't know every Kappa in Chicago was going to come out. It was hundreds of them. And it was a beautiful service, but very, very painful. Say hello, Jeremy, because everybody's saying hello to you.
Hey,
that's my guy. That's my guy. I love you all. I love you. I love you. Love you. And keep hope alive, everybody. Check me out on santitajackson.com. Bye.